Let me get here on my chair. Well, do what? I didn't mean this to be convicting. Do I need to bring an altar call tonight? All right, well, let me make announcements and then we'll get down to the brass tacks here in a little while. Joel needs help on the 14th at the Arvest tailgate party at the Lincoln football game. If you can go, you need to let him know. Be there at 4:45 to help set things up. Trunk or treat is Wednesday night, October the 26th. And then the next Sunday, the 30th. The fall hayride and wiener roast on Sunday afternoon. That'll start at 5:30. There's a sign-up sheet on the table in the foyer if you want to bring something. The 23rd is Youth Sunday. That's kind of reversed. Usually it's on the last Sunday, the 5th Sunday, but Becky and I are going to be gone the weekend of the 23rd for our anniversary. So that's Brother Joel's choice to do that. And October 30th is last Sunday lunch. Want to mention something to you. Christmas is on Sunday this year. Comes around about every 5 years. And usually we have one service on Sunday morning. We've done it at different times, but we'll talk about what time we want to do it. Try to help out the families that have children, but also try to help out the mamas that are having to cook and get ready for Christmas lunch. So we'll try to find something. I'm really partial to 8:30 in the morning. If the kids hadn't got Santa Claus finished by that time and get to church, you spent too much money.
Amen.
All right, well, anyway. And that goes for grandparents, too. Any other announcements? All right, let's look at our prayer list together and go over it, see who we need to add. If you don't mind, look it over. There may be somebody on there that we can take off that you know of. And we just need to update. All right? You're not wearing that brace anymore, right? And it's doctor's orders too, right? Dr. Charles ordered it. Can't fish with that thing on, can you? No, it won't work.
Yep. And you got the latest outline, right?
I mentioned Sunday the situation and circumstances in Haiti, and I hope you all will definitely pray for Brother Norcillus and what's going on over there. It's going to get, I'm afraid it's going to get worse. I don't know what he'll do, but he'll follow the Lord. I know that. I believe that with all my heart. But yes.
So is it like our contributions to the children? Is God getting that from the mail?
I need to talk to his son about that. That goes to an online website that's here, and I don't know how it's transferred. I don't know. I mean, this could get so critical if they're not having the money to pay their teachers and to buy the food. And can they get food for the students? We don't know. We don't know what the situation is.
Using the money that the government's constantly in the mail or getting through the account, not bank accounts, I mean, we want to make sure he's getting it.
Yeah. I'll talk to Priestwell and then I'll call Brother Norcillus. Almost hate to call and ask questions about those things. You never know who's listening.
Yeah.
Yes.
My neighbor, terrible wife, was in the hospital with a heart issue.
Okay.
I wanted to do one for
Darrell.
D-A-R-Y-L, wife, doesn't leave that.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. We were asked to pray for a friend. They went to our church for several years when she and her brother moved down here to go to university. They lived on my place over here. Leanne Reel. Can't go into details, but just pray for Leanne. It's not health issues, just some things going on related to her job. Brother Harrison Davis was mentioned Sunday. He's in rehab. Y'all pray They're trying to get him moved to another rehab. And y'all pray that that happens soon. Debbie Butler put on our prayer group online to pray for Kenny that he came back from vacation with COVID.
Do we have any update on little Brent?
On who?
Little Brent?
No, I haven't heard anything in a long time. Angela Long is to have a heart ablation. Jake Hoosier is part of the crews that are working down in Florida.
They're gonna be there a while, but
Yeah. I think they signed on for at least 30 days. I think. Last week, Brother Beetle put a fella from Lincoln that a lot of people know, Zale Goolsby. Pray for him. Keep praying for Charlie Washington and Daryl Chadwell. I don't know when Rick Neal is going back to Phoenix for him to work on his heart. My aunt Shirley Wilson and her son, my cousin Billy Wilson. Hope you're still praying for Missy Trenum. Who else? Eula, right? Eula Hill, right? ULA. Who else?
I talked to Missy this time that, she said that she's been doing better. She's been able to not be so upset, but her feet and her legs have been swollen.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah. I saw pictures, it's bad. Who else? Anybody else have a prayer request? Somebody you need to mention, update? Somebody you can take off the prayer list to give a praise? It'll happen.
Don't tell Sue to take Lex Wetzel off his biopsy. He does not have cancer,
Okay.
but they still have to find out what the problem is.
Sue, did you hear you can take Lex Wetzel off? Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
he's getting really good all the time, but he can barely walk. So,
Yeah, y'all pray for them. That's tough. One of the hardest things to go through in life. So y'all pray for them, please. Anyone else have a prayer request or an update? Lord has really blessed our church recently with visitors and new members, and I'm thankful. I just give God all the glory and the credit, and pray for Sunday services. We're going to be back in Hebrews 11 again. We're going to talk about Moses, and I'm going to talk about college football too. I know where I'm headed with this, okay? You don't, but I know where I'm headed with it. Anybody else? Thank you to those of you who have joined us on Facebook Live. I can't see your names because I moved further back away from the phone, but we appreciate you being with us. All minds clear. We're ready to pray over these requests, pray for Sunday, pray for one another. We're going to talk about the one another's tonight in our study somewhat. And if you're ready, let's bow our heads and go to the Lord's throne, lift up these requests, and ask God to have His will and His way in their lives. Ron, would you lead our prayer for us, please, sir?
Dear Lord, we just want to thank you that we still have the freedom together and study your word. Thank you for giving each one of us here to help and strength.
Yes, Lord. Thank you.
Lord, we lift up each one on our prayer list, on that have this message. Lord, we just pray that you don't be alive to be.
Amen. Thank you. Romans chapter number 12. We are continuing our journey through the book of Romans. I looked on my file. This is the 37th set of notes I've handed out on Romans. And we still got 4 chapters to go when we finish 12. I don't know when we started it, but it's been
September 2020.
2020? Has it been that long? She wrote it down. I like people that are more organized than I am, but don't expect me to be that organized, I promise. I've enjoyed Romans, I really have. I haven't got bogged down in Romans like we did when we went through Revelation, and that took 3 or 4 years of my life. I don't remember exactly how long. But anyway, we've come to a section, it begins in verse 9. We went through verse 8, 3 through 8 the last time. And I chose a title for this, and I really struggle. I struggle with titles, but I put How We Treat One Another. And I passed out a sheet to those of you who are here in person. I can't pass a sheet out to those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, and I apologize for that. But on the front of it, it's got an outline of the notes we're going to use in verses 9 through 21, 9 through the rest of the chapter. But on the back of that, you probably have seen this. I had it on my file somewhere, but I just went and took it off the internet again. These are all the one another's that are mentioned in Scripture. I read them over, this guy's list. Some of them it's a little bit of a stretch because the one another is not mentioned. I read one place where there were 56 one another's in the New Testament. Another place said 57. I don't know why. You can't get on the same level ground there on that. But anyway, I just gave that to you to go home and take it and look it over. These are reciprocal commands. In other words, love you, I love you too. We are to love one another. I read one preacher who preached these verses, and I liked his title. It was, Let's Give One Another a Hug. Well, he went into in-depth about the history of where Paul said, greet one another with a holy kiss. And in those days, in that culture, they kissed one another. I'm not talking about a kiss on the mouth, all right? It's a kiss on the cheek. When I was going through the chaplain training, I met a guy and we became close friends. We became good friends. He was a great man, and he was a good preacher and a good pastor. But he was from California. He's raised in Carthage, Missouri, but he went out and he's pastor of a large church in California and moved back to this area to take care of his parents. He was pastor of a church in Bella Vista. And every time that bird would see me, he'd kiss me on the cheek. And the first time he did it, I said, Ron, I'm going to knock you out if you do that again. Oh, no, that's the way we do it in California. I said, Bubba, this ain't California. This is Arkansas. But I'm telling you, every time he kissed me on the cheek. And I guess that was a holy kiss. I guess that's the way they did it. But this preacher went into detail about how we don't do that anymore. We shake hands or we hug one another. Well, some people aren't huggers. I don't know if you know that. I mean, I've been around people, they'll hug an absolute stranger. And if you ever sit, I'm a people watcher, okay? And I watch people, and sometimes one of these huggers will come up and start trying to hug somebody, and you can tell they're pushing, they're getting away. They're not hugging me. They don't want to. They'll do it. They'll get it done if they're a hugger. But anyway, I'm just glad we shake hands for the most part. And but these verses have to do with how we live together and get along in the family of God, not necessarily just in a local church, but in the family of God before the Lord and before the world. The world is watching us. They're watching us for both negative and positive. And I would say probably in the culture we live in today, they're watching us more for the negative than they are for the positive. So if we take these verses to heart, verses 9 through 21 in Romans chapter 12, if we heeded these verses and practiced them, I think it would revolutionize most of our lives and our churches. All right? So we're going to talk about our actions toward one another, our attitudes toward one another, and our affections toward one another. All right? So allow me to take time to read Romans 12, verses 9 through 21. There are a couple of words here I may change as we go to give a better understanding. All right? But we'll dig into it more as we get into our study. Verse 9, this is one of the words. Let love be without dissimulation. That word means let love be sincere, not hypocritical. Well, let's don't get into it now, all right? I might talk about somebody. Abhor, which means to despise that which is evil, but cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love. I always love this phrase. In honor, preferring one another. In honor, preferring one another. Not slothful, lazy in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation. We're not very good at that one, all right? Continuing instant in prayer. That goes back and is relative to pray without ceasing, all right? Distributing to the necessity of saints. Whoa, now we're talking about giving, Brother Darren. Given to hospitality. Bless them which persecute you. Whoa, that's against all our American customs, isn't it? And curse not. Rejoice with them that are rejoicing, and weep with them who weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits, in your own mind. Your legend in your own mind deal. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Well, wait a minute. That's against human nature, isn't it? I didn't say it. Paul said it. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. What was the guy's name from Oklahoma that said he never met a man he didn't like? Will Rogers. I'd like to introduce him to some people. I'm sorry, okay. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, don't seek revenge, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. And I want you to notice at the end of that verse, there's no prayer that says, and Lord, let me be an instrument in thy hand. I've heard people say that. I have. They didn't pray it, but I've heard people say that. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him a drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Man.
As a young Christian, of course, I wasn't doing it with the right motive. I was very kind to this person that I considered an enemy. But I did it because I wanted to build coals of fire on their head.
Yeah.
It wasn't the right motive. But since I now know better, but I remember that so clearly.
We'll talk more about that when we get to it, because a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what it means. I mean, I'm always thinking, let's just pour a bucket of hot coals on their head. Literally, all right? But anyway. Do what? Oh, you got a list? Maybe y'all don't want to tune in to this crew tonight, but anyway. Let's talk about our actions toward one another. And I've broken these up into some categories, and we're going to look them over. And the first one I listed as our social actions toward one another. How we get along sociably, how we get along as a group, how we get along in society, in community, whatever you want to talk about it. If we follow these, they will make us more pleasurable to live with,
To be around.
to be around. I know a lot of people who take a good dose of this medicine, and maybe I'm one of them, all right? And the first one is in verse 9a, and he says, let love be without dissimulation. Be sincere. It means don't be hypocritical. Have you ever known, and let's not name names, just give me a nod. We don't have to go into discussion about this. But have you ever known someone, I know I have, several to be in fact, but you just hated to see them coming because they were just going to pour out that just, love and talk kind, but you were wondering where the knife was. You know, it's like somebody said, when they came up, I didn't know if I was going to get a pat on the back or a knife in the back. And that's what this means. To be honest with one another in our relationships. Now remember, this is relative primarily to a community of believers, a body of Christ, if you will. But this will work too in our families, and it'll work too in relationships out in the community. You know, of all people, Christians ought to be able to set a better example just in the general operations of our culture. And I know so many people who think, okay, this is church, and that's one thing, but out there in the business world, it's a different thing. This dissimulation. That's not sincerity. In fact, that's hypocritical. And people get more from what they see in us there than they do here. But let's talk about it relative to ourselves here in this local church. We're to love one another with an honest love. No pretense, no putting on an act. It's to be genuine, sincere. And I know this, you're probably thinking this about me right now. Some people are easier to love than others. True? But think about how he loved us, how Jesus loved us. I wasn't too lovable. So to be honest, all right, sincere about it. I started to put sincerity, all right? And then the next part of that verse, let love be without dissimulation. Let it be sincere. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Let's talk more about loving. Be honest and to be loving. The kind of love he's talking about, by the way, you're probably familiar. Most of you have been in church long enough to know that in the Greek New Testament, there are 3 or 4 different words that are translated in our English Bible, love. All right? One of them is the word eros, and it means a fleshly kind of love. And then there's another word, phileo, and it means a brotherly kind of love. And the church that Jesus gave the letter to John to in Revelation when he was on the island of Patmos, the church at Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is known as the city of brotherly love. So, you know, it's kind of like this. In school, if you had a girlfriend and she broke up with you and she said, I don't love you like that. I love you like a brother. I never knew what that meant. I never had a brother. I had a sister, and we loved one another lots because we had to lean on one another. It was just the two of us, all right? Now, we fought when we were younger, but when I finally figured it out that she was going to drive before I was, and she might take me places and get me out of the house, oh, I loved her a lot. I don't think that's sincere love, but that was my motivation, all right? I grew up in a very loving family, and I know I told this at my mom's funeral. I don't expect you to remember it, but my mom was not raised in a very loving environment. I can tell you stories. It wasn't good. And I know my dad's family loved one another, but they didn't express it. Okay? And I know people who don't do that. I know families who don't do that. But we grew up telling one another we loved one another. Now, I remember as a teenage boy, you know, maybe some of my friends, and we were going to go somewhere, and we were gathered at my house, and I'd leave, and I'd tell my mom and dad, I love y'all. Love you too, son. And they'd look at me like I was crazy, you know. Here I am, a teenage boy, telling my parents, that was just how we are. It was just who we were. And it was a sincere thing. Now, I'm not knocking you if you don't do that. But I know families where there's not much love. And I know people who grew up in that environment, and I've counseled with them and talked to them. And for the most part, they would rather have been raised in an environment like I was blessed to have been raised in, where love was shown, it was spoken of often, and we didn't just say we loved one another, we showed we loved one another. How much more, how much better, I almost said more better, how much better would our churches be? Our small groups, our Sunday school classes, how much better if we expressed love openly to one another? I saw a t-shirt the other day. I had a lady on. A lady was wearing it, and it caught my attention. I'd never seen it. She said, let's go back to 9/12.
Go back to where?
To 9/12. You remember how we were the day after 9/11? Yeah. I mean, it was sobering to think that. I was pastor of a little country church out in the middle of nowhere between Decatur and Centerton, and the building would hold about 125 to 150 people. And we announced we were going to have a prayer meeting, impromptu, and, you know, we just started making phone calls to people. And I figured we might have 20, 25 people show up that night. We got there, and there were people from all over that community who had never darkened the doorway of that church. They showed up to pray for our country. And there was something that was felt there that night. I'd kind of like to go back to 9/12 too sometimes. There was a love. There was a cause. There was a reason. We didn't know what was going to happen. You know, we didn't. It's the first time our nation had been attacked since December the 7th, 1941, I believe, when that Pearl Harbor. So that kind of love is evident. It's evidence. It shows. I could talk about church fights, but if I start talking about church fights, everybody will have a war story to tell. But it's really sad. I think I told you all about the guy that sold us these pews. I think I mentioned it. He's gone now, I'm pretty sure. But I called, and he came down, and he was looking at the building. He said, this is not a church split? I said, no, we're just remodeling the building. He said, man. He said, I make a lot of money off of Baptist church splits. It was funny to hear him say it, but it's not. It's true. It's kind of like that story about the guy that was on he shipwrecked and spent years on an island. You've heard this tale. And they finally rescued him, you know. And when they came, they interviewed him, and there were 3 huts built on this island. He lived there for years. He said, well, this is where I live. This is the house I built. And he said, this is my church. He said, I had to have a church. And they said, well, what's that building over there? He said, that's where I used to go to church. Sorry. always conclude he was probably a Baptist. Since we're family, we should love one another as family. Now, I don't know what that means to you, but to me, that goes deep.
Well, I think the verses explain that, rejoicing when we each rejoice, and crying when others cry.
Let's look at the last part of verse 10. Be kindly affection one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another. This exhibits humility. I was raised in a culture, and I've thought about this often and a lot. You know, Jesus said when he was confronted by the legalist about the great commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. A lot of people took that loving ourselves way overboard. And I heard more about having a positive self-image and all of that. And I think we raised up a generation or two of people that thought way too highly of themselves. And that's not the way this is to go, all right? We're commanded here to put others ahead of ourselves. Got quiet when I said that, didn't it? It's amazing to me how, I'm trying to think of a good word, all right? How shameful some adults can be about their children and or grandchildren, even when their children and grandchildren are wrong. That's why I couldn't drive a school bus. To those of you who do, thank you, Brother Dale. I couldn't be an educator. I don't think I could do it. I don't know how my son keeps on doing it. He's a better person than I am. And if you've ever worked in the public and you've ever been involved in the lives of young people, I mean, I coached youth athletics, summer ball and fall ball for years, and I never had much trouble out of the kids. It was the parents that had trouble out of. Not all of them, all right? There's always the parents that had trouble out of. Well, I could tell war stories, but we don't have time for them. It's God's plan as exhibited in this. Let's read it again, all right? In honor, preferring one another. I don't get my way. No. In honor, preferring one another. Well, that's not the way I see it. In honor, preferring one another. Or you can just be general, I'm against it. In honor, preferring. There are things worth standing for and fighting for. I guarantee you. I know that. When it comes to truths of the Bible, I'll climb up on a hill and fight till the death. But that's not usually what we fight over. It is sometimes. That's usually not what people fight over, all right? So, there might be an occasion where somebody has a different plan. And you say, well, it's not my plan. But how would this affect me? It might be that you might have to humble yourself to show preferential treatment to someone else. In honor, preferring one another. Why do you think people, this is a general question, I've got an answer, but maybe we'll get there. Why do you think people are not as prone to do that?
Prone to do what? To give admiration?
No. This is my way or the highway.
Oh,
Say it again, Miss Helen. I culture. I like that. Yeah, I've heard that so much. There's no I in team, and then somebody came up with a logo and showed where there's an I in team. He'll probably make money off of it. We live in an I culture. What else? Say it. Selfie generation? Oh, man. I was sitting at a football game with Joel in Gravette the other night watching Lincoln get it handed to him. And Joel, he said, let's take a picture. I said, Joel, I don't take selfies. I don't want to. Last selfie I was involved in, we were in South Dakota, down at wherever it is where they have the buffalo. And Becky said, let's get out and take a picture. I said, I don't want to get out of the car. Oh, yeah, it'll be all right. And there are people out there trying to pet these buffalo, and I knew better than that, all right? So we take a picture, and Amy Bailey Egger, she sends back and said, you're not smiling very much in that picture, Paul. And I said, well, what you can't see in the picture, because Becky, I don't know, she had a selfie stick, whatever it was. I said, there's a bull about 40 yards behind us, and I want my hind end back in the car. Anyway. Selfie generation, very good. Yeah, but Joel posted it on Facebook.
That's just not our nature, right?
Yeah, not our nature. Hey, you take two little old babies that's just crawling around, put them in a room, and put two toys there. And one of them will pick up one toy, and the other one will start playing with it. And in a minute, the other one will want the toy the other one's got. They don't know much about toys at that age. What is it? What causes that? I know the answer. Do you know the answer? Sin nature. It's in us. It's born in them. They get it from their parents. I used to say get it from their mama and daddy. I'd always put that little pause in there. I think if we exhibited more humility in our dealings with one another, and even out in the general public, and it's hard sometimes, you know, to exhibit humility.
It worked out the board.
Oh, no.
But do people really understand what honor means?
Not out there.
Right.
No.
I mean, I know of families that have children and grandchildren they haven't seen in 2 or 3 years. Is that honoring their father and mother?
Nope.
I mean, honoring our veterans, some do, but there's those that don't. I mean, do people forget?
Well, most people got a good forgetter, but most of them hadn't been taught.
That's true too.
I was at a military funeral. I preached this funeral. I didn't know these people, but I'm always happy to stand up for a veteran. This man was 97 years old. I don't know if he served in World War II or Korea, but I think Korea. Could never get a straight answer. But when they played taps, I was already standing, but I turned and faced the flag out in the middle of the cemetery. People didn't know. They hadn't been taught. Do we still do Pledge of Allegiance in schools? No, we used to do it every morning. You stood up, you did the Pledge of Allegiance, then they read a Bible verse, and then they had a prayer. I don't guess you can do that anymore. But they're still praying in schools because they're still giving tests. I know that.
Reader's Digest came today in the mail and talked about the veterans, some of the cemeteries, and how the tombstones are just all grody and all this. And it touched this young man. He gave his life to us, and he buried it. We don't even care to take care of his grave. So he started, and this is in Iowa, I think, and then this elderly lady came there and saw what he was doing. She got involved, and they want to go, so far they've cleaned 100 headstones of veterans. You know, we forget the people that died for us. We have family members that have died for us, and to forget. There is no honor anymore.
All right, any other comments before we end? Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm going to end the video at this time.